Welcome to the Note Nuggets podcast, where you can learn how to become the bank, build wealth, and accumulate streams of income perfect for your savings or IRAs. You'll hear from industry experts, seasoned veterans, and everyday investors. Our goal is to teach you how to invest in notes, one nugget of knowledge at a time. Here's your host, Kevin Galang.
Welcome to another episode of the Note Nuggets podcast, where you can learn how to turn others' debt into your income. Today we're talking about underwater mortgages, and you might be asking yourself, what is an underwater mortgage? Well, this is when the balance of the mortgage is higher than the market value of the property. Imagine having a $200,000 mortgage while your house is valued at $100,000. If this were the case, then your house would be what they call underwater. I first heard this term during the 2008 recession. While I was in college trying to get to class on time and make sure I don't fail, my parents' house went underwater. My parents bought their house in 2005 at the peak of the bubble in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I remember being home for winter break and my parents talking to me about how they owe more than their house was worth. They also explained that people were walking away from their homes because they didn't want to stay in them. Fast forward a decade later, now I'm looking at notes on a regular basis. I've come across multiple underwater mortgages. As an investor, I think to myself that buying a mortgage where the house is less than what's owed is risky, because if I ended up with the property and sold it, then the property wouldn't cover the remaining balance. To see if I was understanding underwater mortgages correctly, I reached out to my friend, real estate and bankrupt attorney and previous guest, Shawn Yesner, to ask him why an investor would purchase an underwater mortgage. Instead of trying to summarize his great points, let me read his response verbatim. So here's what Shawn said. There's a higher risk of foreclosures on underwater homes because of economics. If something happens that causes me to fall behind and I have $100,000 in equity in my house, I'm going to try and keep that mortgage current. If I fall behind and I'm $50,000 underwater, then who cares? I'll never catch up payments and make up equity. So screw it. Let me pay off my debts or take vacations or something else. I agree buying an underwater mortgage at retail will kill a note investor. But if you can pick up the note for something less than retail and less than property value, then you'll be fine. Let's say market value is $200,000 and the note is $275,000. If you can pick up that note for $175,000, for example, then you can modify the loan, drop the principal balance, and you've created a performing loan and a stream of income because the mortgage is performing again. I would think this would make sense even if you could pick up the note for $200,000, the break-even point, or even $210,000 or $225,000. You're still slightly underwater, but can turn a non-performing into a performing, getting a stream of income while the house appreciates in value. So in my opinion, I 100% agree with Shawn. I wouldn't buy a performing underwater mortgage because the borrower is less incentivized to stay in the home. So they could just leave, and now I'm stuck with a non-performing loan, which is not what I signed up for. However, if you buy right, buying a non-performing mortgage, then you can instantly create equity in the event of a default. Additionally, you can help the borrower stay in their home if it's a non-performing underwater mortgage. Imagine talking to the borrower and saying, look, I would love to help you. This is how we can make this work by modifying the loan, forgiving some of the debt, coming up with a win-win solution, not only for the borrower, but for you and your investors. And that is the power of being the lender, especially buying non-performing mortgages. So that's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast by going to subscribe.notenuggets.com to get episode updates and additional market insights, industry news, and even more nuggets of knowledge on note investing. So until next week, thanks everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Note Nuggets podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get access to additional weekly value nuggets and get notified with episode updates. To subscribe, all you have to do is head over to subscribe.notenuggets.com. If you have any questions about this episode or note investing, book a time on Kevin's calendar at contact.notenuggets.com. We'll see you next week with another note nugget to add to your tool belt.